countdown time again. This is a list of my favorite games from the 2010s, just like other people have done before. I know I'm a couple months late to the party, but I don't want to have to wait until I'm middle-aged to get another chance at this, because I'd spend the rest of the 20s regretting not doing this video. Here we are. Now, as some people have said in their lists, one game per year, but this time I'll also try to have as few games for a single franchise as possible. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New York City Festival.
Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. One of the most underrated gems in the Kirby series. Barely anyone ever talks about this game, even less than the amount of people who talk about Canvas Curse. I honestly think this is a much better game than Canvas Curse, for quite a few reasons. One being that obviously it had better capabilities since it's for the Wii U instead of the DS, but also because Canvas Curse's soundtrack was just remixes of classic songs with a lot of them being watered down. Well, this one, however, actually has some new songs, and the remixes of classic songs it does have actually sound nice. I also think the claymation style is pretty neat, especially with all the colors. Sure, the game doesn't play like a classic Kirby game, but the control scheme is still something you don't see very often, and they do have more with it here than they did in the last game. While it does take away the copy abilities, it has 3 cool vehicle transformations, so I can probably live with that. So yeah, this game isn't perfect, but it's still worth a try in my mind. Xenoblade Chronicles. Probably one of the most different Nintendo games you could find, and soon to be outdated with the release of the Definitive Edition on the horizon. Whether I'll get that or not, only time will tell. It depends on if they bring something interesting enough or fix enough of this game's flaws, such as its horrible collision detection and its atrocious boss fights that I explained in my worst Killjoys remake. But in spite of the problems I listed, the levels are just enormous. Discovering new parts of them is so much fun, especially since the map system is much better than it is nowadays, since it actually shows parts of the map being revealed on the map screen instead of just opening up entire sections of the map, so you can now see where you've been. And while the character's facial models may not have aged the best, the visuals are still downright breathtaking to look at. This is arguably one of the most realistic looking games Nintendo's ever given us. The game is admittedly too long, but you can take breaks from it to prevent yourself from getting too burnt out on it, and at least its length means it has a lot to offer. Definitely a very interesting game.
It's freedom like you never knew.
Because 2018 seemed like the most slipping year for video games in a while, at least until this year, where so far there's only like 3 interesting looking games coming this year, picking a game to represent 2018 wasn't exactly very hard. The only games of the year that would deserve a C+ or higher were Pokemon Let's Go to Kanto for the 5th time, Kirby Star Allies, which was my favorite game of the year, but then Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, despite being disappointing by Smash Bros. Standards, managed to bounce back up even in spite of all the stuff it removed, by bringing some back. We may have lost target tests, event matches, and all-star, but at least Stage Builder and Home Run Contest came back as DLC, so a bit of my anger subsided. But I still can't get over a certain mode that we shall not mention. However, we still have more characters and stages than ever before, with over 80 fighters and over 100 stages. I wish we had more actually new stages though. Where the heck are Aether Paradise, Green Gardens, Mangrove Cove, and Crafting World? Well, with what we have, this still helps Smash Bros. As the best crossover in the world. Now excuse me while I put up the number transition before all the Marvel fans chase me out of town.
We can zoom all the way to the moon from this great wide wacky world.
A Hat in Time. A cute as heck 3D platformer, as some would say, and is very well deserving of that title. Hat Kid is one of the cutest main protagonists in any video game you could find. Nearly everything she does is almost guaranteed to put a smile on your face. The environments she explores are also very lovely, which definitely helps with a cute tone. There's also a lot of great voice acting, which you wouldn't really expect from a 3D platformer, and it comes with a lot of great dialogue, including some that probably should have become memes. I could go on and on about this game's strengths, but then I'd make myself look like a broken record, since pretty much everything else I could compliment I already said in my list of games I played in 2018. Only goes to show that this is a wonderful game, and I take my hat off to it. Now, if only these dysfunctional Gears for Brains could actually release the Arctic Cruise DLC for the PS4. Wow, I can't believe I haven't talked about this game a lot. Mario Kart 7 is just like nearly all Mario Kart games, being better than its predecessor. Why is it better? Well, it introduces new mechanics like the glider, which is a lot of fun to use. Though I don't like how it replaces those cannon segments, since you're no longer invulnerable to attacks on them, it's still tons of fun to use everywhere else. It also has a few tracks that are so long that they're divided into sections instead of laps, making them feel more awesome. And unlike the previous installments where it literally felt like the opponents were all trying to team up just to hurt you, this time it's much more fair. You have no idea how many times I've been hit by 4 items in a row in the Wii version, which was still an epic game, but you get the point. Mario Kart 8 may be a better game than this, but that unfortunately won't be on here because of the rules I have. But anyways, it only goes to show that every Mario Kart game is better than the last. Now if only they would actually release Mario Kart 9, and no, Mario Kart Tour doesn't count.
Let's do the Odyssey.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate may be the best multiplayer experience for Smash Bros. Players, but Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U is what I think is the best one overall. Why is that? Well, first off, because it made the impossible possible by bringing in characters like Cloud and Bayonetta, and because while Ultimate definitely excels in the multiplayer department, it lacks the single-player experience, because Classic and Home Run are the only worthy single-player experiences, since event matches, All-Star, and even the trophies have been cut entirely. Event matches were pretty awesome since they felt like they had small plots with all the interesting scenarios. All-Star was a good test of skill with how you fare against every fighter, and trophies were also cool since they had their own models. And it actually felt like you were adding something to a collection, unlike an Ultimate where you were just unlocking pieces of paper. The soundtrack also felt like it was trying much harder to mix beauty and fast-paced, as opposed to an Ultimate where they think that every new song in the game needs to be extremely fast-paced, even ones like Midna's Lament. Seriously, it feels really weird that you would remake Midna's Lament into a super fast-paced track. Well, that song was probably out of place for Smash to begin with, and should have just stayed in Twilight Princess. Sorry for getting off track. There's a stupid rule where apparently it's a horrible crime if your entries aren't at least a minute long, even though sometimes it's near impossible to do without repeating points from an earlier countdown. And the point is, this is what I feel is the better Smash game.
Odyssey, yes, Odyssey, Odyssey.
I really don't know what I can bring up about Fire Emblem Three Houses. I mean, not only did I mention it in my games that grew on me, but I'm also going to have to inevitably talk about it in my next list, so I'll try to leave some compliments towards the game still available. While in the first few hours it feels like it's trying too hard to be a Harry Potter game, it actually handles them quite well, because most of the monastery bits are optional, and even the teaching bits don't really have too many negative repercussions to your student's performance, and you can even auto-teach if you don't feel like it. It still plays like your traditional Fire Emblem game in the more important parts, specifically the battles, and while I am upset that they brought back weapon durability meters, at least you won't be stuck as much, because if weapons run out, they can still be used, albeit not as good, but better than nothing. Besides, at least the magic reloads between battles. The characters are also some of the most lovable characters I've seen in a Fire Emblem game up to this day, especially now that we actually have voice acting for their lines, so you can hear their tone of voice better. This might just be my new favorite game in the Fire Emblem franchise.
Return the path, my new addition to the cast.
The classic Super Mario Bros. Formula gets really tiresome. It was fun when it wasn't overstaying its welcome since we had games like Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3, and Super Mario World, but then came the new Super Mario Bros. Games and 3D Land, which was at least in 3D, but aside from that, same formula. So it took me completely by surprise to find out that 3D World actually felt like it was trying to do more than just nostalgia pandering. I mean, the other new Super Mario Bros. Games were decent, but unlike this game's predecessors, it has a very large variety of types of levels. It has a Japanese temple, a level made out of sweets, a honeycomb walkway in space, a Mario Kart style level, a mine infested with fuzzies that try to kill you, a level where you can adjust certain platforms just by touching them on the gamepad, and some levels where you can slide on a plushie. There are also some new awesome mechanics to it, like the double cherries. Twice the Marios means twice the fun. The clear pipes are also clearly different from normal pipes, since they send you through certain portions. They bring joy to me just going through them. If you don't have a Wii U, you are really missing out on this world of fun.
Jump with me, grab coins with me,
Sonic has had a rough history in the past decade. We may have gotten the underrated gem that is Lost World, but we got games like Sonic Poop, Sonic Rehash, and Sonic Forced Riding. So we're going to have to go way back to the first year of the decade. And of course, what other game would I be talking about than Sonic Colors? This game is downright astounding with its wonderful visuals and its catchy soundtrack. That's not all though. The Wisps are also much more fun than I would have thought. Instead of just feeling plain gimmicky, they actually feel like really fun abilities, such as clinging to walls and using yourself as a laser to blast certain crystals. They're definitely enjoyable, even if they do lack some of Sonic's classic abilities behind them. And you know how some 3D Eggman fights have him repeatedly say stuff like, "Get a load of this," or, "You know what they say, the more the merrier." Well, he doesn't do that this time. Unfortunately, that also means less memes. but at least we still get some good jokes in the game. The game did have admittedly too much side-scrolling bits and not enough 3D bits, but it's still overall a very enjoyable experience. It may be one of the last Sonic games to meet its standards, but it's also what I think is the best of them all. Pokemon Sun and Moon take the top spot of this list without any questions asked. Even though I said in my 2016 games list that Face was the best, when I really think about it, these games are even better. This generation was a huge step in the right direction from Gen 6, because the 3D models look better than they did in X and Y, and because the camera shows more angles during conversations with certain characters instead of just staying in the default views for certain periods of time, so the cutscenes look cooler. As for the gameplay, it's definitely something to be proud of. It follows the traditional Pokemon formula, but also replaces those wimpy HM moves with Poke Assists, which you can call without having to waste move slots. It also has some new Alola forms, giving it a bit more of a variety, but even subverting your expectations a bit. But where this Sun and Moon shine the brightest are with the music and characters. The music almost brings tears to my eyes with just how good it is, and characters like How and Lusamine are among some of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. This game was so marvelous that when playing through Ultra Sun and Moon for the first time, I was deeply moved by it because of how it reminded me of the lovable memories of the original Sun and Moon. It even gave me second thoughts of not having Sun and Moon at the top of my 2016 games list, as I mentioned at the beginning of the entry. This might even be my new favorite Pokemon generation. I mean, it's just that good, and it earns its spot as what I think is the best game from the 2010s. I'm Ed527 II, and I think that I finally know what my favorite video games are.